Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about how Ukraine is more like West Virginia than Texas. That'll make sense later. There is a very common misconception about the dynamics over there. And we're going to clear it up because I saw this misconception at play, and after looking to see how widespread it was, I also realized it was kind of the fault of people like me. So we're going to clear it up today. I saw somebody trying to explain the situation over there by saying that it was like Texas broke away from the United States and then got armed by China. These analogies are never perfect, but that one has a fundamental flaw. Okay, so the Soviet Union, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, okay, it often got described as Russia because of people like me. People who were providing political commentary or foreign policy takes, they often said the Russians rather than the Soviets. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that. But understand the Soviet Union was not Russia. The Soviet Union was a union of Soviet Socialist Republics, just like the name says. You have to look at it more like the Soviet Union was the federal government, and the republics were the states, even though they were, and this is important, national level administrative units. The Ukrainian Republic under the Soviet Union existed for a really long time. Ukraine is, I don't know, 100 years old. In just going back to the beginning of the Soviet Union, to when that process started. It didn't break away from Russia. It had been separate. So why did people like me conflate Soviet and Russian? Because the Soviet capital was in Moscow, which is in Russia. It's in that Soviet republic. So most of the people who worked for the Soviet government, meaning the overall government, particularly those who would be engaged in discussing stuff with Americans, were Russian. So the Russians want this became common, forgetting about all of the other ethnicities and the other groups of people who were present in the Soviet Union. This was said all the time during the Cold War. Russia and the Soviet Union were interchangeably used, but they're not. And that's led to this misconception. So, when the Soviet Union dissolved, all of the republics became countries of their own because they were national level administrative units. Technically, they were nations on their own the entire time under the Soviet Union. Now, that's theory. That's what's written in the Constitution and all of that stuff. But, I mean, we do understand in practice it was very centralized, and the Russians controlled most of it. But they were their own country even under the Soviet Union. So when the Soviet Union dissolved, they became their own country. They didn't break away from Russia because they weren't part of it. If you want to make that analogy work, the United States dissolves. Russia is Virginia. Has an outsized role in the federal government and everything. It's perfect. Ukraine is West Virginia. A long, long time ago, they were together. So Virginia invades. That's more what it's like. The reason this is important is because a lot of Russian propaganda today relies on Americans conflating the Soviet Union and Russia, because they want Americans to believe that Ukraine wasn't a country, that the Ukrainian people aren't real. They're just an offshoot of Russia and therefore belong to Russia. This is why it's important to understand that. And the reason people don't really, I'm willing to bet it goes back to commentators during the Cold War who knew what they were saying in their own mind, but when it came across, it got lost. The idea that it was just talking about how Russia had an outsized role got lost, and the Soviet Union became Russia in the minds of a lot of people. So when the Soviet Union broke up, all of these little countries broke away from Russia. But that's not really what it was. When the Soviet Union dissolved, the republics inside the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics became countries of their own outside of that union. That's it. Understanding this helps kind of safeguard you against Russian propaganda that is particularly geared towards Americans because of their habit of looking for the greater power and disregarding minority groups and other ethnicities. So understanding that the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, I think is what it was, existed since, 1922, somewhere around there. That's important, and it helps safeguard against this. It isn't that Ukraine broke away from Russia. It's that the USSR dissolved, and all of the independent nations that were already part of the Soviet Union became independent nations outside of the Soviet Union. That's how it happened. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.